Hello, Dee, on the Sunday after Thanksgiving. How was your Thanksgiving?
Oh, it was so sweet. The kids all came over. I wasn't feeling 100%. So all the kids came over. I cooked a lot of things on Wednesday, but they let me finish everything, helped me finish everything up. My son was making gravy. One daughter was making dressing. Another daughter was helping wash the dishes. It was really fun.
That is really fun. I went out to my sister's house and we had our usual traditional Thanksgiving, a house full of people. And I have to tell you, she made us, her siblings, the most wonderful thing.
What?
Well, at the family reunion, my aunt made me take this army blanket home. And she said, this was your dad's in the army. And it had been in her attic, I'm going to say, for at least 40 years. The blanket's probably 75 years old.
Is it green and wool?
It's green and wool. There's not much you can do with it. It's not like it's a handmade relic.
So my husband has a bunch of those blankets that he used in camping. So I know exactly what this army blanket looks like. But okay, so then
So I took it to my sister, the crafter, and I said, do something with this.
mhm.
And so what she did is she cut out little Christmas tree shapes and she made a little Christmas tree on a little stake and put it in a little pot with some moss in the bottom. And for the topper, this is going to sound bizarre. My dad was a dentist, and when kids would get their teeth cleaned, they could pick out a little cheap fake ring out of a little box. That was their gift. So she had a bunch of those left over. That was the tree topper. And then she got these little fish charms because he liked to fish, and she put that at the bottom, and it's just real cute. And then
Oh, it is cute.
she made a tag on the back with his picture from when he was in the army. And then she wrote where the material came from, the blanket, and then she listed all our names and all the grandchildren's names and all the great grandchildren's names. So it's a nice little keepsake.
It's a great keepsake. What a way, she is so crafty.
She is. She is. But anyway, enough about that. Well, shall I start us off on this week's podcast episode?
Let's do it.
Welcome to the Garden Angelus, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana, where I have a suburban garden measured in square feet. It's about a third of an acre.
And I am Dean Ash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden an acre and a half out of 7.5 acres out in the country.
We call ourselves Garden Angelus because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want others to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. So, how does your garden grow?
So my garden grows with a decided turn to cold. It
Here
went
too.
cold. And so after I recorded last week, I was so busy on that Sunday. I did pick up some more leaves with my new leaf back thing. And then on Monday, I put up Christmas lights outside. And then that was pretty much it, except I dreamed on Wednesday night that it was June and I didn't have any seeds or plants for my vegetable garden yet. And I went out there and somebody had planted like a row of evergreen shrubs across it. And I'm like,
Uh-oh.
this is not right. But anyway, I've recovered from that dream, but it has not made me want to start my seedlings quite yet, but sooner rather than later. Just kidding. Anyway, I put together my Lego poinsettia
Yeah.
and then all my waxed amaryllis bulbs, I had them on plates.
Yeah.
So I have these vintage bowls that were my grandmother's, and they're probably, they're very lovely. And so I put some paper down at the bottom to lift the bulbs up, and I set two bulbs in one and one in another and one in another. And then I put some moss that I had, sheets of moss that you can buy at the
Nice.
craft store.
Right.
It's on my table, those three together, and it looks really, really pretty. So I'm pretty excited about that. And they all budding really nice.
Mine are too. Mine look good. Right now, I have them on the mantle, but I think I'm going to go and put them in blue and white poles. I just think it'll look nicer. And if I put some in the bottom, it'll lift them. I may have some of that sheet moss too out in the greenhouse or in the bar in the living room, maybe underneath. I'll go look. So in my garden, no, I didn't. So I wrote this last week thinking that I would have this done. I planted the few bulbs that came. I did not do that, Carol. I'm going to do it on Wednesday. You want to know why I'm going to do it on Wednesday?
Because it's going to be warmer on Wednesday?
Yes, because it's going to be freaking cold every day this week. I might get them in today. It depends on how I feel. So let's see. And then I harvested some of my lettuce. I did do this in the So the lettuce is in the cold frame and the radishes are in the potager. And the lettuce was pretty good and the radishes were sublime. And I know that's not a word we use with radishes very often, but radishes that have had a touch of cold in your garden are sublime because they are not bitter. They are super sweet, crunchy. They just taste like winter, right?
They're delicious.
So that was really good. And then Bill and I constructed yesterday two baffles for the bird feeders to try to stop the squirrels. We'll see if that works because Bill is hard on the squirrel population and he's driving me bananas. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Shall we play favorites?
We shall play favorites. You know what my favorite is? I found some snowdrops in bloom last week.
Didn't you write about it on your blog or on your Substack update? I read it somewhere.
You read it on one of my letters to my dearest garden on
On
Instagram.
Instagram.
But
There you
anyway,
go.
they're quite lovely. And what day was it? It really got sunny and probably Monday afternoon, or maybe it was Tuesday. I can't remember. They opened up really nice, and I thought they'll be there in more or less kind of frozen form for the rest of the winter. That little puddle of them will. So anyway, that is my favorite. And yours?
Mine is the drupes that are on my Forest Rouge Rusty Black Haw Viburnum.
I saw.
Viburnum pruniflorum. I think that's it. Pruniflorum.
Yes.
So I made a video for Instagram and we'll link to it in the show notes. And here comes some squirrels for the bird feeder. We'll see if our baffles work. We'll get to test it in real time, Carol.
I
Fingers
guess.
crossed. I hope so for the squirrels. That's all I'm going to say. So tell me about our question of the week.
So we got some fan mail. It's from Christy in Alabama, and she says, Dee and Carol, enjoying podcasts as ever. Your delightful banter gets me through the dreary winter days and fills my mind with plans for spring and projects for the winter. Here's her question. She's in zone 8. She says she's literally on the dividing line between A and B. Can I still dig up and divide and transplant my hardy native perennials like yarrow and Monarda fistulosa? How about other perennials like hostas? We have bouts of freezing weather that soon return to an average temperature between 35 for the low and 60s for the high. Dee, what say you?
I think she can because those are really tough perennials. I mean, I wouldn't try to transplant something super sensitive, but this winter I'm going to transplant my pink muley grass, and it's also a native that is really tough. And I'm going to pick a really good sunny day where the temperature's nice, get it out of the ground and right back into the ground, water it in, and not worry about it. And I think she should do the same. What do you think?
I think that's a great idea. And you wrote also in the show notes that it's a good idea to cut them back so that makes them
Yeah.
easier to move. And you got this nice little clump. But yes, as if her ground's not frozen and she's getting into the 60s for the highs at times, I think they'll be just fine.
I do. I do too. So I've got a teaser for next week. One of my clients, one of my garden coaching clients asked me a bulb question yesterday that I think people will really enjoy.
Oh gosh, that'll bring them running back, Dee.
Hey, bulb questions are just fascinating.
They are
All right.
fascinating. I'm going to do a quote and we're going to talk about our flower topic.
Okay.
If you look the right way, you can see that the whole world is a garden. And that we have used before. It's Frances Hodgson Burnett from The Secret Garden, written in 1911.
Great. That is a really good quote and I love it. So this week you decided
I
we're going to talk about.
No, I put this topic on our Trello board a long time ago. And then you said, hey, let's do that one.
Let's do it. Yeah.
And the title is Flowers from V to Z. How did we get all freaked out on violets, viola, and zinnias?
And you wrote a big long paragraph about why you love violets, violas, and pansies, which are all part of the same family.
Yes. And I don't know how, it's like if somebody comes in love with goth gardening, for example. How does that happen? I don't know.
Okay, first of all, goth gardening is about as far away from violets as possible,
It
right?
is.
I mean, violets have sweet little faces and they're pretty and they smell good. I don't think goth gardening has any of that.
I don't know why that just came out of my mouth and I don't know where it came from.
And on the first day of Advent, no less, you're thinking about goth
I am
gardening. That's
not. So
funny.
anyway,
Okay.
violets.
Just had a moment back to October. All right, keep going. Why do you like them? I know why I like them. I just said.
Sweet little faces.
And they just smell good and they're pretty and they're spring.
Okay, so that sums it up. I would say two things. Number one, I picked violets as a child, so be careful what you child picks as a child because could imprint on them and then, like, oh, you love dandelions.
Yeah, that's okay. They're cute too.
But anyway, yeah. And then, as an adult gardener and in the late winter when you're looking for color, there's nothing like those violas to just suddenly, you know, if you're like me and you plant 10 flats of them everywhere, you've got color everywhere and they'll withstand the cold and come right along and they'll just take you right into summer until you're ready to throw them out and put in the other things. Although we never throw them out here. We gently plant them in the garden in hopes that they'll spread,
Yeah.
but they
So in my garden, we plant them in the fall and then sometimes they make it through most of winter, depending on how cold it is in winter. And then sometimes they last until spring. And then we just cut them back and let them grow some more. Sometimes I pull them out because I might not want black and orange violas in spring.
exactly.
But
Yeah.
sometimes I plant some that have really pretty color for spring or fall just because I know they might come back. And they look so great with bulbs. Another thing is, I just took some pictures of my pansies. So I will give
Cool.
you, well, I think I write the newsletter this week, but I will put one in the newsletter. So you also said your violets and pansies will spill over into a tiny book collection. Sure. Hmm.
Yes. And so, I mean, if you decide, for example, and I'll just pick on roses, if you decide that you're in love with roses, you will never be able to corner the market and buy every book on roses. I do believe that I've cornered the market and bought almost every single book on the genus viola or pansies. In fact, there's a new one coming out in February, and I've already got us lined up to get review copies.
Oh, good for you.
Um, and then as a
So,
genus, there's only 600 species in the genus, but you'll never encounter all of them.
no.
But you can get your arms around it, so to speak, and that's kind of nice too.
And I can attest that you can buy a lot of books on roses. I have a lot. Some are so old that my kids wrote in them. There's one in particular. And I was really into heirloom roses for a while, antique roses. I still like them. And I had everything you could read on them. So I get it. But roses really aren't in the V to Z. You know what's in the V to Z? Zinnias or zinnias.
Zinnias,
So
zinnias.
they're probably my favorite fun little flower right now. And yet I am not tempted by the ones that are going on sale on somebody's website soon because I looked at the prices and I was like, I am not paying $17 for a pack of seeds. I am not.
No, you are not.
I'm not saying read listeners and clients who listen to this show. I'm not saying you can't because they always hold that little packet up and go, I'm sorry. I'm like, I don't care if you spend it. There's too many things I want to plant. So I can only afford so many. But zinnias really grew on me during COVID, frankly, because, I mean, I'm at home a lot anyway, but during COVID, I was at home more. And I just think they were bright and cheerful. And I still feel this way. I will say this about zinnias. After last year, when I tried to grow a lot of the pastels, they are much harder to grow than the brights. The brights are easier. And part of the reason is that everything eats the lighter colored ones. Cucumber beetles eat them. I mean, they just get so much insect damage that it is really hard to grow them. Whereas the brights, I don't know if they're just stronger genetically because that's what zinnias naturally are. They're just easier to grow. So there you go. I still try some.
That is interesting.
Yeah, I thought it was too. And I asked my friend Jennifer at Ladybug when I started having a lot of failure, I called her and I said, okay, what gives? And she goes, oh my gosh, they're so much harder to grow. And I said, okay, so it's not just me. And she goes, oh no. She goes, Benary's giants will see you through summer. She goes, some of these other ones, not so much.
They're
So
like dainty little princesses and they have to have things just right.
I think so. And there are roses like that too. And there are daylilies like that too. I think it all comes down to genetics, but I could, that's just, what do they call that? Analytical? No, not analytical. Anecdotal. That's just anecdotal reasoning. I don't have any science.
Now, let's back up a minute though, because when you fall in love with something like, I love the violets and stuff. And the next thing you know, I've got a whole shelf in my china cabinet full of dishes that have violets all over them. Do you have a bunch of rose dishes?
Yeah, I have a whole set of china that's roses. Don't you know this?
Did I know this?
Yeah, yeah. I have, oh my gosh, I'm not going to be able to remember the name of it. I'll look it up while you're talking about the vegetable. But yes, I have a really famous china pattern that is roses and has a gold rim. It's my good dishes. Only I have 5 sets of china because I'm crazy.
So, do you have an inclination to get a bunch of dishes that have zinnias on them?
No, not at all. No, what? I don't think that would be. I mean, the only people who would probably do, I mean, I guess if maybe Mexican pottery, because they're from Mexico,
Mm-hmm.
just something to think about. But no, I'd be more likely to go try to find a Talavera pot with a zinnia
Uh-huh.
on it. But usually when you see flowers on those, they're usually sunflowers, which I also
Yeah.
like. So
Yes.
there's a lot,
So
there's
anyway,
just so many things to like.
there are. And so even if you're fixated on zinnias or violas and pansies and violets, you are correct that you make your garden big enough that you can have a lot of variety because like you said, if you fall in love with those pastel zinnias and then they're the dickens to grow, that is no fun. You need some easy wins out in the garden to boost your confidence. You can quote
So
me on that.
it's Royal Albert Old Country Roses.
Okay.
That's the name of it, and it's beautiful. It's very ornate. And I have a tip for people. If you do like china, if you're one of the people that does like it, go buy it at your local antique store or on eBay because the youngsters mostly don't want it.
Yeah, they just want that plain stuff from Crate and Barrel. Boring.
Yeah, I have some plain stuff, but life should not all be plain. All right,
No.
shall we
So
move
wait
on
a
to the
minute.
next quote? Oh,
We need to summarize and say two things we just said. Life should not be boring. And the second thing we said, which you missed it because you were looking up your china, you need some easy wins in the garden so that you boost your success so that you keep gardening. I said that. Now we can do that quote for the
okay.
rest.
I didn't miss what you were saying. And although you paraphrased that, that was not exactly what you said, but it's close enough. You said you should have a garden big enough to be able to grow a variety of things so that you'll have more success than failure. But I like how you summarized it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Or paraphrased, as it were. All right, ready?
Yes.
December, being the last month of the year, cannot help but make us think of what is to come. That's by Fennel Hudson. That's hilarious.
I
I,
think that's how
who
you came up
names
with the idea to do
who
the
names their kid Fennel?
well, two things happen. Either A, you saw that quote and decided we would talk about fennel, which is our vegetable, or B, you decided we were going to talk about fennel. And instead of writing whoever's name that really was, you wrote fennel instead. It's either one
No,
of
that's really their name because I
okay.
copied it. So,
Okay.
but it might be Fennel and it might be a family name. Who knows? So we're going to talk about Fenneculum vulgare. And vulgare always means
Common,
common. Just like viridis always means
green.
green. I think it's fun to know these little tips. All right, so fennel is in the carrot family along with dill. And we knew this because, well, they all look alike. They all have very similar foliage and they all a lot of similar growth habits, things like that.
I don't grow fennel.
I have grown fennel several times, and I grow bronze fennel all the time because once you plant bronze fennel in your garden, you will have it forever and ever. Amen. But I've also grown common fennel, and it's
And you
delicious.
can eat the bulb or the foliage.
Yeah, but most people shave is it a bulb really, or is it just a
It's
bulbous structure?
it's
Because
the
it's
bulbous
above
structure
ground.
above ground where all the and that's what a bulb is. It's
Okay.
all those leaves and
So,
things formed together into the bulb. So, but it is a leaf structure.
so I guess technically it is a bulb. So, yes, you shave
Uh
it
huh.
into winter salads and it's delicious. And I love it. It has a slight licorice taste. You can also eat the foliage and put it on top of your salads if you want to. Same with bronze fennel and that. Bronze fennel does not form
No.
that structure the same way. And my husband hates fennel, so I don't grow it much because I really like it, but it's not for everything.
So we should mention that fennel is a perennial vegetable when you grow regular fennel, and it's hardy from zones 4 to 9. And I looked up on botanical interest. They have three kinds of fennel. I'm not talking bronze. They had one called Romanesco, and then Finocchio
Mm-hmm.
and Dragon.
I think it'd be
Finocchio?
no, it might be Finocchio because it's
Yeah, could be.
Italian and dragon. I don't know which one I grew. I just grew some a while back. I have no idea, but it
I
was good.
I'm going to say that whether you get Romanesco, the Finocchio, or the Dragon, you're probably getting pretty much the same thing.
I think you are too, and I also think that it doesn't really matter. And so, one of the nice things about fennel is that black swallowtails love it. And I also think, I don't know, I'm not going to say that because I'm not sure of it. So sometimes what I do is, so my swallowtails will get onto, say, the parsley or the dill. Their favorite thing is dill, right? And then here come the wasps to kill them because that's what wasps do. And then I thwart the wasps by taking some of them and then putting them on my bronze fennel, which
Uh
is in a
huh.
totally different bed. And it really does seem to work because all animals and insects have this instinct of, I found food here, therefore I'll keep going to that spot over and over again. And so if I have it in a totally different area, then they don't know where they are. And also they hide better between the bronze fennel or in fennel in general than they do on dill. It's a more delicate plant.
I would put bronze fennel in a flower garden for sure.
It's beautiful and it tastes like licorice. So it's a good breath deodorizer and it's also good for your stomach. All fennel is.
Cool. So the other thing I wanted to say about
Yeah.
fennel is, like you said, you can the bulbous stem base. It's called. You can harvest that anytime it starts to fatten up.
Don't wait too long because it gets
Yeah,
tough.
you cut it just below the soil surface, and then you can take it in and clean it up, and like you said, shave it off. Leaves can be
Yeah.
clipped for fresh use anytime that there are fresh leaves out there. And then you can
Uh-huh.
harvest seeds to eat from yellow green to gray green. And it says if you allow them to turn brown, they'll fall to the ground before you can harvest them. And then, as you said, you will have it forever.
You will. You will. And I had fennel for several years, even in a garden that it was in the
Right.
potager. So I would till up the soil to put down more seeds and of the other things, and the fennel would pop up here and there. I hear it can be a real pest back east. I would not say it's a pest here at all. It's
So
just
speaking
pretty
of pests,
and
I
it's
mean, I
nice.
have dill that just comes up in the garden and then I move it where I want. But in this
Yeah.
one garden bed this fall, I had so much dill in there. It was from one end to the other. It was like a cover crop. Not a very good one because the problem is if that gets established and overwinters under those leaves, those tap roots could go in pretty deep. So it's not as easy to weed out. It has to kind of be hoed out. Just other than just pulling, unless it's really small.
That's true.
So the other suggestions that I saw was that you can mulch around the base of the plant to blanch the bulb and make it a bit more tender. So this is a case where you could use some mulch. But if you
Yep.
have water stress, root disturbance, heat, or lengthening of days can cause them to bolt and go prematurely to seed. And the Florence type fennel is easier grown for a fall harvest. But the most exciting thing, Dee,
Okay.
you know what the most exciting thing is?
No, Bill just walked out on the deck. I was just texting him while you were talking about we have a we have a problem out there. There's water running everywhere. But he saw it before I told him, which was weird. No, I don't know what it is. Please tell me.
You can grow fennel as microgreens.
I bet they'd be good.
I bet they'd be very good. I think I'm going to get some
Maybe a
seeds
little
and try it.
licoricey. I
Yeah.
think that would be delicious. All right, next quote.
Summer fading, winter comes, frosty mornings, tingling thumbs, window robins, winter rooks, and the picture storybooks. Robert Louis Stevenson.
I bet that was in a kid's book, don't you think?
I saw that quote and I thought this goes along with our book this week. We have a very unusual book. We have a picture storybook and it can be for adults or children. It's called The Cindervale Pearl by H.P. Jones. And I will tell you that H.P. Jones is the pen name for one of the sons of friend and listener, Kathy of Cold Climate Gardening. And she sent us this most interesting book, which is both illustrated and has sort of an epic tale involved in it that goes from April to April. So anyway, it's the tale of a man who goes on a quest for a plant called the Cindervale Pearl. And he starts off his journey, and I quote, looking for a way to earn his place in history as the man who recovered a priceless treasure straight out of legend itself. And so he sets out on his journey in the spring to find the Cindervale Pearl and bring it back. It takes him a year, and he goes month by month through the book, goes month by month through each of his adventures and brings him back home. And it ends with this little teaser. He is ready to embark on the adventure that is well known to all gardeners. I have planted a seed and I wait to see what will grow. And so I will say this is a great book to read along with kids or just read it yourself. It has some really nice illustrations that her son did for each chapter. And I think if I know the story right, he did the illustrations and then Kathy said, could you put a story with that? And so it's turned into this very lovely book. You could read it probably over several nights because, there's it's not just like 2 words per.
No, I would say it's for slightly older children.
Yeah, slightly older children.
But I will say my granddaughter was really attracted to it when she came over for dinner right after it came, and she ran and put it in her mom's lap and said, please read this to me. And her mom started and she goes, well, Maddie, this is a pretty long book. And so, because Maddie's only, she's not even 5.
Right.
So she wasn't able to hold on to the interest of it. But, a 6-year-old, 7-year-old could.
Yes. And I have some great nieces and they are in that 6 to 7 year range. And I think that they would really enjoy hearing this story. So it's, if you like a classic story arc that leads a person through adventures and obstacles and trials, and they end up not where they thought they would end up, but someplace else in terms of what they thought they would
do.
What they would get. So it comes in hardback, paperback, ebook, very reasonably priced. And there's a free ebook preview, and it is sold through lulu.com. So we'll put a link in the show notes. And I will say to our listeners, go check out the preview and see this, especially if you have some kids that might enjoy a read along. And what kid doesn't enjoy a read along? I think this would be a great book for them and a great surprise for Christmas.
Very pretty and beautifully illustrated.
Yes, and that is The Cindervale Pearl by H.P. Jones, a most unusual book, but we are very pleased to feature it today.
Okay, and you want me to do the next quote?
Yes, please.
Welcome, winter. Your late dawns and chilled breath make me lazy, but I love you nonetheless. And that's by Terry, and I don't know how to pronounce your last name, Terry, but we'll say Gilment. And that's the pen name of quotation anthologist Terry A. Woodhull, and she was born in 1973. She's from Phoenix, Arizona, and she is the person who does the Quote Garden website.
Oh, how lovely.
And so I thought featuring one of her quotes was a pretty cool thing.
That is a very cool thing.
And the Quote Garden website has been around for quite a while. I remember looking at it way back when the internet wasn't like it is today, when it was just words. So our dirt this week is about a holiday plant, and it's the holly. And it's about how hollies change their leaves to smooth at the top of the plant and spiky down low where deer can reach it.
Yeah.
It's a natural adaptation to ward off a predator. In this case, probably deer or rabbits if rabbits ate it. And I don't know. I mean, it's also Ilex vomitoria. So it's got it's got to be a plant that they don't go for first,
I would think not, but
right?
yeah. But Ilex vomitoria, I think they make tea out
Mhm.
of that.
Yeah, we've talked about that before. I'm not going to drink it. Okay. So, anyway, there's a really great article in the National Geographic about this. And it was just very interesting. And it's about how plants adapt to ward off predators. And then you found some more stuff about hollies.
I did, and we're happy to feature holly. It is a traditional Christmas plant for decorating and things, but the ability of a plant to produce different leaf shapes is called heterophily. And I
Hmm.
quote, many plant species have the ability to alter their leaf morphology in response to such changes, like the deer browsing. This phenomenon is termed heterophily and is widespread among land plants. And I just thought with horror of those days I spent in college where we had to ID plants by their leaves in a lab for a grade. And it's like, if they brought in all kinds of different leaf shapes because of the ability of the plant to change leaves, we would have just gone crazy.
Yeah. Goodness. No, that would be terrible. So you found some information from the Botanical Journal of the Linnaean Society, which is Linnaeus, of course.
Yes,
And it's
everybody
just
quotes
that's where you
them.
got that from. Yeah,
Well,
they're a good one
every article about this phenomenon basically quotes the Botanical Journal of the Linnaean Society.
as their original source.
Yes.
Yes, they
Suggests
used to, gosh, when I was a legal assistant way back when, there were primary sources and secondary sources. And that's also true in science and some other stuff. So they would be more of a primary source.
they're the primary, National Geographic is the secondary.
Right. Very, very interesting.
Aren't we educational today with our primary and secondary sources?
I just can't believe my brain pulled that out, but it did. So, and I'm watching all the birds. So here's a funny thing. My husband takes in the bird feeders at night to stop the raccoons. He actually goes and puts them in the cans, the trash cans that hold the bird feeder,
Uh huh.
to hold the bird food. And we have these big straps that lay across them. And the raccoon has not figured out that we don't attach them every time, these big long straps. They're kind of like bungee cords, but stronger. And so you just lay it across and it fools the raccoon. And then what reminded me of that is all these little birds, the really little ones, like the chickadees, the black-capped sparrows, the
Right.
regular brown sparrows, house sparrows, they all start twittering in the trees right by the bird feeders and in the two American wisterias. And he hears them and he's like, oh, it's time to put out their food again. Isn't that funny?
That is funny.
So they're funny because the big birds don't come until the little birds talk. And the little birds are hard at it today. So
Very good.
there you go.
I'll do a quote.
Sounds good.
Winter, a lingering season, is a time to gather golden moments, embark upon a sentimental journey, and enjoy every idle hour. John Boswell. You looked him up? John Boswell, March 20th, 1947 to December 24th, 1994, was an American historian and full professor at Yale University.
I love that quote. It's beautiful. So rabbit holes. I'll go on mine first. Yours is longer. So I was at my hairstylist on Wednesday, I think for, I don't know, Thursday. It's all a blur. Anyway, she was,
Not Thursday, that was Thanksgiving.
so it must have been, oh, it was Friday. It was the day after Thanksgiving. So she and I always talk about food. And she said, hey, I just read this book. And I said, what's it called? And she goes, The Dorito Effect. And so that sent me down a rabbit hole looking up that book because you know how we both read Good Energy? Didn't you read it too? Yeah,
Yes.
which is
Yes,
about
we did.
mitochondria and how certain foods give you better energy. And there's a lot more to it than that, but it has some of the same stuff in it that the Dorito effect has, when she was talking to me about it, she goes, did you know And I said that the tobacco companies took all of their information about human beings and what makes them crave things from cigarettes over to food companies when they decided to make the switch, when they bought up all the stock in food companies, big companies, and I'm not going to name any because I might pick the wrong one. And she goes, "Yes. How did you know this?" I said, "Because I read Good Energy." But she goes, "They make us crave that stuff." And she goes, "Did you know that because we use only conventional farming in the US that we've reduced not only the nutrient value of what we eat, but also the taste?" I said, "Yeah, I did know that." And she goes, I said, "Did you know that they estimate we have 40 seasons left if we don't start putting stuff back?" And she goes, "No." So we had quite the conversation and it was quite the rabbit hole. And now I want to read the Dorito effect, but I think it repeats a lot of the same thing that I read in, but it's just about food and it's just about processed food.
Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes in case anybody wants to read it. Maybe somebody can read it and give us a book report.
Yeah, because we read a lot of books. All right, your turn.
So
Wow.
I was into poets this week for some reason. So my Lost Lady of Garden Writing is a poet named Elizabeth Ellen Long, and you started it because you gave us a quote about from her a while
Yep.
back. And so
Yep.
I started looking her up, and I don't find anything that she necessarily gardened, but I read some of her poems, and because I bought a whole book of her poems.
But she
Um,
wrote nature and garden related
yeah.
poetry. So I have a feeling she gardened.
Well, she has
Don't you?
one poem that's really interesting. I hate to say sweet. It's called Death of a Gardener. And I put that in my Lost Lady of Garden Writing Substack that I wrote about her. So people can go over there and read that. We'll put a link. It's a good
Mm-hmm.
poem. And then later, YouTube decided that I should watch an entire documentary about Edna St. Vincent Millay. Did you know much
Yeah.
about her, Dee?
No, I did not.
She was a bad girl.
A bad girl.
Anyway,
She made poor life choices, is what you're saying.
I believe she made poor life choices, but she was quite the poet. And she was a poet like from her teens, and she ended up
Yeah.
going to Vassar, but she was like 21 when she started there, and she did not conform well because she grew up with a single mom and pretty much kind of did whatever she wanted to. And then
She had a lot of freedom.
at that time, they wanted the girls to follow a pretty strict regimen. But anyway, she did end up getting married, and she and her husband had a farm up in New York, but they had an open marriage, and she had a long-term affair with a guy over in Paris for years. Finally came back, but
Nice.
she was an alcoholic, and she was addicted to morphine, and
Good
kind
Lord.
kind of wasted away in her farmhouse. But she was the first woman to win a Pulitzer Prize. And anyway, I'll put one of her poems in the newsletter called Winter Night because I'm always looking for winter poems at this time. But
Yeah.
anyway, that's enough rabbit hole for now. But anyway, I'll put a link to that YouTube video in case anybody else wants to listen to the whole documentary about Edna St. Vincent Millay. Also, how she got her middle name St. Vincent, which is an
How?
interest. It has to do with somebody being saved at a St. Vincent hospital, and her mother decided to give her the middle name St. Vincent for. I don't remember the exact details, but people can listen to find out. But
Okay.
but anyway, she was quite the deal.
Because,
And they said at one time she would go out and do poetry readings, like in theaters and stuff. And she earned the equivalent of $300,000 in today's dollars doing that. So she made quite a bit of money as a poet.
which she wasted on. Obviously, poets were paid more money back then, as were writers. And she wasted it on morphine and alcohol in her
But
affair.
the I don't think the entire farm where she and her husband lived is intact, but the farmhouse, you can still go visit it as the home of Edna St. Vincent Millay. There's caretakers, there's people that study her. And so there's a lot of reflections about her from these people that have kind of studied her life. But, it was the roaring 20s when she was a young adult. And so she just She took
Well,
advantage of it.
there was a lot of wild stuff that went on during that time period, as
All
is
right.
now, actually. All right, on to garden commissions. I'll do mine really fast. I'm going to plant those bulbs and I'm going to go out there and disconnect that hose and fix that problem. There's a bird on that hose trying to figure out how to drink the water from it. So there you go. Keep the
There you go.
fountains filled right now and put your heaters in your fountains because it's time. So I'm going to have to tell Bill about that.
This reminds me that so that will be my first garden commission is I do need to put out my heated bird bath. I hadn't put it out. I put the old bird bath away. So I'll get that out. Maybe I'll do that today. If it warms up, I'm going to pick up more leaves in the lawn to add to compost bins and veggie garden beds, tend my house plants. I'm looking for more holiday plants, of course. And as I mentioned earlier in the podcast, I'm going to start up my little microgreen farm inside again, maybe with some fennel.
If you like licorice at all, fennel's
I love
delicious.
licorice.
I don't like licorice like the candy, but I love licorice tasting things. Not the alcohol either. I don't like it either. All right, let's wrap this up.
Thank you for listening to the Garden Angelist. I hope you've hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode. We publish every week on Wednesdays at 12 a.m. Eastern Time.
If you subscribe to our free Substack newsletter, you'll get a link to listen to the podcast a whole day early.
And if you want to help support us, use our affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we're in a small commission and it costs you nothing.
Or you can set up a monthly subscription through Buzzsprout or make a one-time donation through PayPal.
Thank you for everyone who's done so. It helps us pay for podcast hosting.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the garden gate this week. Bye until next week.
Bye, everybody.